Welcome back to Loyalty Leaders Podcast. I'm David Feldman, Chair of Loyalty Summit, and today I'm joined by Michael Trager and Josh Duffy. Now, Michael Trager, we spoke a little while ago, a few episodes ago. Michael, hi.
Hi, thank you for
And we
having
talked
me.
about VIP and luxury travel booking. And Michael, I'm going to see you next week in Chicago at Loyalty Summit Americas, and we're going to be sitting down and talking about VIP hospitality some more. Continue our previous conversation, but we're also joined by Josh Duffy. Josh, hi.
Hi there.
Welcome. Now, Josh, you can see if you look at the pictures of Michael and Josh on the screen, these guys look very professional. And Josh actually has his own podcast. It's called Crap Vegas. I'm going to do a horrible job of telling people what that's about. So, Josh, I might hand to you to do a little quick intro about yourself, Crap Vegas, and kind of what do you talk about on your podcast?
Well, thanks, David. So Crap Vegas started about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago now. And the name Crap Vegas originally came about because I and my co-host Chris like to play craps in Las Vegas. And so this was Chris's idea to start this podcast. He was looking for a domain, couldn't find Craps Vegas, so found Crap Vegas. So that's where the name comes from. But actually, and I wasn't too fond of it at first. I wasn't crazy about it, but it's grown on me. And the reason it's grown on me is that I think of our podcast as a lot more than just craps, the game with dice. So it's Crap Vegas. So that allows me the freedom in my mind to say we've expanded beyond just talking about the game of craps into anything, any crap related to Las Vegas. So Chris and I are what I would consider to be kind of maybe low-level high rollers in Las Vegas. We're not the top of the top. We're not noir at MGM, although I might be able to be if I focused all my play at MGM. But we're teetering there. So we thought that we offered a perspective on Las Vegas in the Vegas podcasting scene that not a lot of people talked about. This idea that we play at a level where we can have hosts at multiple properties, that we can have lines of credit at multiple properties. And so we like to talk about that. We like to talk about our experiences. This dates us a little bit, or dates me a little bit, but I like to think of us as the Regis and Kathy Lee of Vegas podcasters, if you will. And we have a lot of fun. I think people really enjoy the show. Sometimes we get deeper into gambling, but we talk about the shows we go to. We talk about our restaurants we go to. We talk about our experiences in Vegas, kind of at the level that most of the things we get are going to be taken care of by the casino properties.
Yeah, Josh, let me perhaps add just a little bit of my own context or perspective for those listening that are really kind of not familiar with gambling loyalty and hosts and maybe the ins and outs, and maybe even you haven't been to Vegas. Or if you go to Vegas, you're kind of I went for a social occasion or an event or a wedding or something like that, or some kind of celebration. Maybe you're a once every couple of years type Vegas visitor and not necessarily a heavy player as they're known. But the nice thing to Josh, I'll turn his horn a little bit for him, but the nice thing about Josh's podcast is if you are just a casual Vegas person or maybe just casually interested in learning a little bit more, or you're just interested perhaps in the loyalty side of it, it's a great podcast to listen to because it's Chris and Josh talk at a very high level. Most of the other Vegas podcasts, if you look them up, they're very detailed. And if you're not already familiar with Vegas and certain properties and how things work, it's very confusing to follow along. So you don't have to be a big gambler or even know anything about the game of craps to listen to Josh and Chris's podcast. I'd certainly encourage it. If you do like playing dice at a casino, Chris and Josh do go into a lot of detail about that. And sometimes it's a little bit over your head, but it can be a lot of fun. But
Can I just interject
Josh,
one thing about?
Oh, sorry, Michael.
Yes, just about the hard part, and a lot. Josh does a wonderful job talking about casino loyalty. They talk about casino loyalty a lot on Crap Vegas. And I would say that casino loyalty is like the stepchild of a lot of loyalty programs because it's like people don't like to speak about it too much. And I think part of it is because it has to do with gambling, because a vast majority of casino loyalty, of the rewards from casino loyalty, are directly related to your action or how much you're gambling. And people often don't want to admit that. People are quick to admit, I flew 200,000 miles, I stayed in hotels for 70 nights. They're not quick to admit they spent 4,862 hours at the craps table. So it is interesting. And when you try to, and one of the things that I've been trying to do for years and years, and I do it also with Zorkfest, and I know Josh tries to do this, and we do this with a lot of people and on our podcasts, is educate people about casino loyalty so that they understand how to get the most of it and understand how the programs operate, because it's really important. Because if I had a dime for every time a person came up and said, oh, I don't really care much about that, I'm not a big gambler, and then you try to get out of them but not a big gambler, and then you find out, oh, the person says, well, I bring $5,000 for the weekend.
Yeah.
You're like, well, that's enough to actually, if that's what your gambling bankroll is and you enjoy this and that's what you do, there are ways to optimize it and do it better. So I always like to interject, because they don't like to talk. People don't like to talk about their gambling unless they win. They love to talk about winning.
And that's a good point. And it's a good point, because, when we're talking about, in this discussion today, we're not just talking about people that might be gambling $20,000, on a visit to Las Vegas. Maybe your gambling budget is $500. Maybe it's $100. Maybe it's
Right.
nothing. Maybe you're not even gambling at all. Maybe you don't like to gamble, and that's okay. But this is probably an opportunity. There's probably the opportune time to insert the. If gambling's not fun, please call. Look, we're not trying to suggest that the topic of casino loyalty is only relevant to you if you are a high stakes gambler. And I think, Josh, on your podcast, if people listen to a few episodes, certainly they might tune in on one random episode where you and Chris are talking about some eye-watering amounts that might have been played at the slot machine or at the craps table. But at other times, you do have, when you're addressing listener questions, people that might have a gambling budget of $100 or $500 or something like that, or maybe they don't even play at all. Should they go to Vegas? Where should they go? You talk about restaurants,
Right.
You talk about shows, things like that. It's all very interesting. But what I find is fascinating, and sort of what I want to delve in a little bit today in our discussion, is you do talk about your experiences at various properties, engaging in the programs. You mentioned MGM, Noir, for those that don't know, is their invitation only, very top elite level tier. Typically, you must be a high level gambler or, visit and spend a lot on properties to be considered for that. It's kind of like, for those that are familiar with airline loyalty, it's like talking about concierge key or global services, one of these invitation only levels that most people, it's like, oh, I wonder what I have to do, how much I have to spend or how much I have to fly to be invited for that. But you also talk about properties, and you also talk about hosts, and both of you have mentioned hosts already in the discussion. Josh, for those that are not familiar with how casino and VIP services work, could you talk us through and explain a little bit about what is a host, what does a host do, and, how do I get a host, assuming that might be relevant to my action in Las Vegas?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are kind of three, and Michael and David, you can speak to well, you can probably speak to all three, but you can speak really to the first two. There are essentially three ways that you can interact with properties, resort properties in Las Vegas. You can book directly, just pay whatever, through a travel agent, through whoever, through the property itself, book a regular stay at a Las Vegas property just like you would. You might also be able to stay at a property through the property's loyalty program that offers rooms and other things that come with that, which we'll probably talk about a little bit. I know David and Michael will. And there's the third option, which is having a relationship with a casino host. And casino hosts are individuals that are employed normally by the casino properties themselves. So MGM has a host pool, Wynn has a host pool, Venetian in Las Vegas, the Caesars properties. And they offer a personal relationship with higher end players. And what that means is they will book rooms for me, they will book restaurant reservations for me, they'll book shows for me, that kind of thing. And they're distinct from the loyalty program. So a lot of people say, if I reach platinum at MGM, will I automatically get a host? You might. I don't know the intricacies. I can't remember the intricacies of when a host is assigned to you, but your status at a program at MGM, for example, being platinum, is distinct and different from your relationship with that host. The host is arranging whatever they're arranging for you based on your play at the property, not your tier status. So whatever they can do for you is based on your theoretical gambling at that property. And they can be both a blessing and a curse, I would say. The blessing is that you have a personal relationship with an employee at the property that can arrange things for you, and they are paid based on your theoretical loss. So the more you theoretically lose, and this is not your actual dollar, but they're paid based on your theoretical. So the game you're playing, how much you're expected to lose, and so on. So they have an incentive to make you happy and hopefully gamble more and all of those things. And they always tell you they don't care if you win or lose because they get paid based on that theoretical. So they want you to win. So they're pulling for you, that kind of thing. So there is a fun side to that. There's a fun side to having. I know that if I want to book Vegas next weekend, I can text my host at whatever property and say, I want to come Sunday through Monday or Sunday through whatever of next week. They will set me up in a room. I can oftentimes ask for whatever room I want and get that. I can say I want to see a show. And this is, of course, all, and it varies depending on the level of player you are, what they can do for you. But that's the idea, that they can set you up. They can take care of charges on the back end. So meaning if I have dined at a lot of fancy restaurants or something like that, and there are charges left on my bill at the end of my trip, the host can review my play and see if it's sufficient to take those charges off my bill. They can do all sorts of things like that. So the downside to a host, and we'll probably get more into it, but the downside to a host is that you have this personal connection, and the casinos want this, of course. So I feel that there is some compulsion to play at a particular level, to play at my historical level, almost to please your host. You've built this relationship. You want to make this person happy. They like you. You like them. You don't want to let them down. This is all by design. This is the properties encourage this, and they want that. But that's the downside, is that you now have a personal relationship. Whereas if you're booking through a loyalty program or booking directly, and you decide to switch to a different place, you want to stay at a different place, or you want to play a lot lower, it's harder to do when you have a host on property, if that makes sense.
And
That's just a few things.
I think you need to really differentiate for people when you say theoretical loss, which is very much a casino term. The best way for travel people to understand what theoretical loss is, that's really like your spend component. So in travel loyalty, you're often looking like, a concierge key spends $75,000 a year on flights. Also with hotel programs, there's usually definitely a spend. The spend has a relationship. How a casino determines your spend really is your is really based on your theoretical loss. Now there is an actual, but just so people understand, a theoretical loss and an actual loss. A theoretical loss, every gambling game has a house edge, and depending on how long you play and at what wagers you play, there is a theoretical amount of money the casinos will win. That old saying that the casinos always win because the games have a house edge. So there is always a theoretical. Now there is also a component of that which is an actual loss, where because sometimes things don't go as theoretical, and they can go either way. You can hit a big jackpot or do really well and win a lot of money. So you could have had a trip where your theoretical loss was $10,000, but you won $100,000. You could also have a trip where your theoretical loss was $10,000 and you lost $25,000. But I think that, but the only way that they can really balance that is creating this component called theoretical loss. And I guess the only other little thing to add in there, they do take into account things like actual loss, but that's another level there. And Josh makes a very good point about hosts. The most important aspect of it is they can make exceptions. So it's not just based, it would be as if, you were Diamond in the Hilton program and you wanted to book a room and you could speak to somebody and say, I absolutely want this particular suite. There's no way to do that because it isn't there isn't a person who can do that. There is no like exception based thing. And I think that's one of your biggest differentiators for a casino host, is that they are exception based. They can absolutely make exceptions, and that's what makes the relationship so strong. And I think that's that's like you were saying, the good part and the bad part about it.
So sorry, Josh, I was going to say, if I could sum up, I'll come back to you in a second. If I could sum up, so what we're talking about so far, just because in case it's a little over the head of some travel loyalty followers, what we're saying, a couple of points that I took away from what both of you said, Josh, is number one, a host is very different to the actual casino program. So let's say you're MGM and you're gold or platinum, that has no relationship to whether you actually have a host with the casino. You could have no status in the casino program and you could have a host, or you could have high status in a casino program and not have a host, depending on the program and depending on all the rest of it. What you're saying is a host is a separate approach to casino loyalty. Because also, MGM, for example, you could have status in the program and not be a gambler. You could just spend a lot on hotel rooms and on restaurants and on shows at the bar, and they consider you a valuable customer. With a host, it's very much about your gaming or gambling behavior, how much you spend per bet, how long you play at the table or the slot machine, and it's really a gambling relationship. But what both of you have said as well is if you do have a host, you sort of have this obligation to keep playing at the level the host expects you to play at, or else, the relationship's a little bit on the rocks. So, Josh, my question to you is let's say you're not a huge whale. You're kind of a casual Vegas visitor, but you sometimes have a couple of big trips and you've maybe got a host, maybe at a very low level or whatever else. But let's say, hey, my next trip, I'm not gambling. I'm going with my family. I'm going to see a concert or a show or something like that. Are you going to be punished for that?
Well, that's a good question. So that's one of the fun things about having a host is not necessarily. And whereas you might be punished by the casino loyalty program, if you have a history with a host, a history of play, and I can give you a couple real world examples, you can not play and it won't necessarily hurt you. So for example, I have a relationship with MGM and I went, maybe it was 2 years ago now, my wife wanted to go for her birthday to see Barry Manilow in Las Vegas. And this was going to be a birthday trip. We brought our kid with no gambling at all. This was a zero gambling trip. I contacted my host. I said, would you set me up for these dates? And it's my wife's birthday and so on and so on. And we're going to go see Barry Manilow, who's not an MGM property. But would you set us up? Ideally, I want to make this as special as possible, but I'm not going to be playing at all. And he said, absolutely. And I wanted to stay at Vidara because we wanted non-smoking and less of a casino atmosphere in Las Vegas. He set us up with a 2-floor loft, beautiful room, had champagne, had a birthday cake, had happy birthday on the window, knowing that I was going to give them zero play. And that all happened just as we envisioned. And it did not hurt my relationship, my free play, for people that don't know, based on my play, my offers, my casino offers usually come with a certain amount of, I'll just use an example. We'll give you $1,000 of casino play during your stay. So after that no play trip, my offers for the property did not go down. That doesn't always happen, but when you have a relationship with the host and you've established yourself as kind of a loyal player and that kind of thing, you can sprinkle in those low play, no play trips and it doesn't hurt you. I think that's less likely to happen just on the regular loyalty side. The less you play, the more those offers will go down.
That's a great point.
Oh, that's a fantastic point because I got an offer in my email yesterday, Michael. And I want to say it's from MGM or something. I know it was something like I don't know, free up to 3 free nights or something. But you still have to pay a resort fee because I don't have any status with MGM. And it was a $10 free play and maybe $50 resort credit, which would maybe you could use for the resort fee. I was like, yeah, that's not really enticing to me, but I'm not a regular player at MGM, but I could certainly see that might be the case. You might get some generous offers. You might go and take a free room at a casino in Vegas, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're a first-time visitor, but you play and you swipe your loyalty card, and the loyalty program is seeing what you're doing, and then they send you these automated offers, and then you might take up the free room as an offer, but you don't play in the casino, and then the next time you get a free offer on the email or in the letterbox, as you say, it's dropped and it's nowhere near as generous as it was. So I think what you're saying is interesting. Michael, did you have some comments on what Josh has talked about so far in terms of that sort of host relationship vis-a-vis the loyalty program?
I think for gambling programs, I think that the true essential beauty of hosts, if it's done correctly, is you're not tied into an algorithm. You're tied into a human relationship, and a human relationship that can look at a big picture, which is something that's
Mm-hmm.
actually rather rare today with somebody looking. So like they were like the circumstance Josh was describing, they can look at his big picture for the year and say, but his next trip, we know he's going to be gambling the way that he regularly gambles. So it's fine if we give him this additional perk, and he doesn't have to worry about it. And I think that if a host program is done properly by design, all of that makes a lot of sense. And for people who gamble consistently with a consistent bankroll, which is the amount of money they bring to gamble, it is actually sort of nice to not have to worry about all the intricacies all the time of the casino loyalty program, because regular casino loyalty is heavily algorithmic. So it's basically looking at your play based on the player's card that's in there, and looking at different things that happened during your trip, what you played, how many tier points you got, what your theoretical losses, and then it's recalculating based on what offers it thinks it should give you to maybe entice you to come back, or maybe they're giving you too much. And it's no, and that can be, in some ways, if you are a decent player, that can be extremely stressful, because you feel, I'm doing exactly what I was doing before, but now my offers have gone down, I don't understand what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. Whereas when you have a good host, a host can look at it and say, hey, our system says, Josh's offers generated is this, but I'm still going to give him an extra $500 free play, because yes, our requirements have become tighter, business is really good, but I'm still going to take care of Josh because he's a consistent player and I know in the big picture what he is. So I guess that combination of exceptions and not having to rely on the algorithm is very good. And that's what's tricky. That's what's very tricky about casino loyalty when we talk to people about it, because I have, like, depending on the day of the week or the person I'm speaking to, some people I'm like, you never want to host, or it's not going to work with you.
Right.
That could be the people who are more into, tweaking their play a little bit, playing bigger some trips, paying less big other trips, maybe status matching, maybe leveraging spend to get tier points and tier point benefits and those kind of things. If you're that kind of person, a host is going to be very, very difficult for you because you're not consistent. And if you're not consistent, and also if your loyalty is a little bit all over the place. So if you're like, hey, I got a good offer from this property, hey, I got a good offer from that property, hey, I got a good offer from that property, I'm going to sort of bounce around, and my action or the amount that I'm gambling is not consolidated. Whereas a host, if you are a consistent person and you like that property and it fits like a really good glove, and that's where you want to be, a host could be really, really helpful for you and actually can create less stress. So it's sort of funny. A host can be more stress for certain kinds of players and less stress for other kinds of players, even though it's the same exact program.
And one thing I wanted to mention, Michael, you mentioned the exception part of something that hosts can do. This is kind of a way that I blend loyalty programs with my relationship with the host, is that let's say I have an offer from Venetian, I'll use them as an example, for $1,000 free play and tickets to the Eagles at the Sphere. But if I don't go see the Eagles, I have another offer from them that says I get $1,500 in free play, for example. What I can do is I can tell my host I'd like to book this offer with the $1,500 in free play. And then I can say, and would you be able, I wouldn't phrase it as a command, but always a question. Would you also be able to get me tickets to the Eagles? So I can leverage the higher free play offer that came with the loyalty program with the relationship with the host, who knows that I'm likely to spend or have X theoretical dollar loss on tickets to the Eagles on top of that corporate offer that came with the loyalty program, if that makes sense. So that's a real way that host can provide a benefit that is an exception to your loyalty offers.
And
It's
I know
brilliant.
this. I know when we talk about theoretical, it keeps going over people's tops. So I just want to kind of reinforce the
Sorry.
point. No. I want to reinforce the point to those that aren't familiar with it. This is just a calculation on the casino side that basically says the more you play and the longer you play, theoretically you're more valuable to the casino as a player, and therefore if you do have a host, or even just if it's the computer spitting out an offer to you on a monthly email, they're likely to be more generous to entice you to come back and play more. But realistically, you could completely break even for a trip, or you could make a little bit of money, but you could have a huge theoretical loss because you played at the slot machine or the craps table or the roulette table for 10 hours. Josh is about to have a heart attack because I mentioned something about roulette. But I think this is just the important point to note is you don't have to be losing money going to the casino to have a host or to be considered valuable by the program. And as you say, your host wants you to win money or break even. They just want you to have a good time. And if you're coming with the family, enjoy a show, whatever else, they this is about hospitality. But obviously, from the casino's perspective, it's a business, and they don't want you to lose so much money that you never come back again. What they want you to do is, yes, they'd like you to lose a little bit each time, but they'd like you to be leaving happy because you considered you had a valuable trip and you got looked after, and it was within your budget and all the rest of it. I want to pivot to a different angle. Michael, you and I live in the travel loyalty world. Josh, we have people that listen to this podcast obviously are familiar with airline status and hotel status and things like that. Most people in Vegas are not locals. Most at a casino on any given day, most people visiting a casino are not locals. They're not there every week gambling huge sums. Most people going to a market like Vegas are casual visitors, maybe first timers or once a yearers or once every couple of years, things like that. And a lot of people may be coming in for maybe a work conference or a work conference, and then they might do a social or leisure family trip or boys or girls trip at some point. And a lot might have airline status or hotel status, for example. And a lot of the properties have partnerships with hotel programs. Rio is part of the Hyatt family. Resorts World has 3 Hilton properties on site. MGM used to partner with Hyatt. Now they have a relationship with MGM. Venetian has a sort of a relationship with Hyatt. How does that figure into kind of the way your perspective of the world there, Josh? And I know you had an episode a while back where you kind of, I think it might have been even a listener question you had about, hey, if I'm a bit more of a casual visitor, for example, should I be thinking about trying to stick with one property and get a host, or should I be trying to stick with one brand of property like MGM or Caesars, for example? Can you talk me through a little bit about how you kind of view that?
Absolutely. I think it varies. My answer is that I'm a lawyer by trade, and the answer, as always, for a lawyer is it depends. So that's our answer for everything, our default. So I think there's a couple things at play. If you're just coming to Vegas either for a convention or for a boys or girls trip or something like that, and you want to try and accumulate some sort of status, so join a loyalty program, maybe get a host at some point, then yes, it's great to focus your play at a property. And when I say a property, I don't necessarily mean at using the MGM family, for example. You don't necessarily need to play just at Bellagio, but any of the properties in the MGM portfolio in Las Vegas, so Aria and so on. But if you're hoping to come back again and generate some sort of offers, have a relationship with the host, or maybe even have those charges, as I mentioned, taken off at the end of your trip, if you've played enough, sometimes you can get some of your food and beverage charges taken off of your bill at the end of a trip, that kind of thing. Then it's great to focus your play at a property group. If you just want to wander the strip and have fun and not worry about being tied down, it's one thing I like to tell new visitors: don't be afraid to do that. Don't necessarily tie yourself to a loyalty program if that's not going to mean anything to you in the future. And it is a downside to playing at my level, or even any kind of regular Vegas visitor, is you do get tethered to a particular property group or a couple of property groups if you want to. But I don't feel the same freedom that I did at the beginning of my Vegas journey to just wander the strip and play wherever I want to and play $20 here and $50 there. I feel, and it's, I enjoy it. I like to play, but I feel that I have to play at where I'm staying to generate those theoretical dollars, to make sure I get my offers, And I'm making it sound worse than it is. I enjoy it and I like that, but there is a freedom, a fun freedom about Las Vegas to just feel like you don't have to play anywhere. So I think it kind of depends on what your goal is. It's always great to have a loyalty program and to get yourself in there, and you can sometimes generate things on that very first trip, get some free play, sign up for a program. But if you don't think you're going to be coming back to Vegas regularly, I don't think it's as important, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
Michael, any thoughts?
One of my things is that I always think travel loyalty in combination with casino loyalty working together is always a plus if it's done correctly. And one of my, pet peeves is that I think sometimes the different silos, they don't work together, the casino loyalty and the travel loyalty people. And it's almost like they resent giving benefits because they're under a different silo. And that to me is foolish. And why is that foolish? Is because you should use these opportunities to embrace the status that the person has, and you should want to be giving them the benefits. You shouldn't be putting asterisks on things. As one example, I mean, Hilton has made things a little bit complicated with that. When they first started at Resorts World, Hilton Diamond members could get their Diamond benefits when they were under casino offers. That was a very nice, generous thing to do. Then they decided, no, that's the casino silo. So you get the casino stuff. You can't also get your Diamond benefits, even though you happen to be Diamond, which you're as a Diamond from Hilton, not from the casino. And then they've also done, not just in the casino and travel world, they've done some of that stuff with the consortia programs too. And that's starting to become more prevalent, where they say, oh, you booked under the Hilton for Luxury consortia program, your Diamond benefits don't count. Why? Don't do that. Okay, the person's Diamond. They think they're special. They are special. They have a top tier with your program. And now you're saying, if you book under this other program, we're going to penalize you. It's just negativity that isn't necessary. And I understand some of it is based on probably numbers and who's paying for it and cost benefit. But I think the optics are really, really bad, because you need to always use these situations to help advertise and educate your members. You want a Diamond member who's a Hilton Diamond member to come and gamble at Resorts World and stay under a comp offer. And you also want to say, and we also love you for being a Hilton Diamond member. You don't want to take away. You want them to be able to embrace that. The same thing if they book under the consortia program. Thank you for booking the consortia, the travel luxury program for Hilton. Oh my God, and your Diamond. This is so great. We want to also give you your Diamond benefits. We want the optics, because what that does is it reinforces to somebody the importance of being Diamond. So then someone who's just involved in the casino loyalty program, in this example, they say, yeah, but it's also valuable. I'm also loyal to Hilton. So you're building loyalty with the Genting program at Resorts World, and you're building loyalty with the Hilton Honors program. So you're basically making people happy about both programs. Why not? That's the thing. And that's sometimes something that I think gets lost a little bit. And I think people have to take a step backwards and think, what are we trying to do here? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to promote our programs. These programs both help each other. These programs both help our brand. So let's do everything we can do to encourage that and make people feel that way.
It's a good point. I mean, in travel loyalty, we always, as an industry, we're always trying to be aware of friction and reducing friction. And, elite programs and all the rest are all about reducing friction. Give you the priority security line and the priority check-in line at the airport. We'll get your bags out first, in theory. We'll get you on the airplane first, in theory. We'll maybe, we won't charge you for check bags, because you have elite status. It's all about reducing these friction points. It's not necessarily overtly about monetary spend or saving you money or anything like that. It's taking friction out of the expense. And Resorts World's a great example. And I don't mean for us to be picking on Resorts World, but it is a good example. And full disclosure, I like the property. My kids love the property. They've been a couple of times now. My son affectionately refers to he doesn't quite understand the concept of Las Vegas. He looks out the window and sees the resort pools down on the deck, and he thinks that's Vegas. So in his mind, Vegas means the pool. But hey, maybe that's not too far from the truth. There's probably a lot of grown-ups that associate Vegas with the pool. So maybe we'll just leave that as it is. But Resorts World's a great example, because I think what you're saying, Traeger, is it's interesting, because somebody might come to the property for the first time because they are a Hilton member. Maybe they're a Hilton Gold and Diamond member, and they're like, hey, I'm going to go to Las Vegas and I have Hilton Diamond status. Where should I stay? Oh, look at this. Resorts World looks kind of fun. It's a Hilton property and I get my Diamond benefits, so they'll get there, and then they get their breakfast credit as a Diamond member. I mean, they'll get to check in at the Diamond check-in line. Maybe they'll get an upgrade. It's Vegas, so probably not. But, hey, they'll try their luck. They'll get welcomed as a Diamond member. They'll get their bonus points, for being a Diamond member staying at a Hilton property. And then they might like the property. They might have a great time. They might gamble a little bit. They might see a show. And, they might sign up for the property's resorts program, the Genting Rewards program. They might put their card in the slot machine. And then what happens a month or two later is they get an email or a letter in the mail with an offer to, hey, please come back. Maybe they played a little bit and they get, hey, here's 2 tickets to a concert. So then they go back. They call the line, they book the offer, they come back. Now they just booked a casino offer to come and stay for a couple of nights for free at the Hilton or the Conrad or the Crockfords. They don't get a breakfast. They don't get their breakfast credit, because even though they're Hilton Diamond, they booked through the casino offer. Okay, you're all right. That's a little bit of friction. It's sort of a little bad taste in their mouth. Maybe they have a big gambling session. Now all of a sudden a host reaches out. Now they have a host relationship. So then the next time they come and they stay, and now they have a host. They check in at the VIP check-in desk, and they have a basic room that's been booked for free. And they say, oh, is there any chance of an upgrade? Maybe I can get a room with a strip view or something. Oh, I can't change that because actually you booked through a host, so I can't even touch that at the check-in desk now. And no, you don't get any recognition as a Hilton Diamond member. You don't get your point. You're not getting any points. You're not getting, you're being treated kind of maybe worse than somebody who booked through Expedia.com. So that's clearly a friction point. And I think that to Michael's point, these silos between the casino, between hosts, between the hotel affiliated program, and even the hotel operations, the check-in, things like that, are so siloed, and they introduce friction points that these properties and brands are leaving money on the table. And not just by creating a negative guest experience, but there's probably upsell opportunities. There's opportunities to have a more seamless guest experience that might allow for the guest to come and visit more often or spend more often. But also, when you introduce friction, you're also opening an opportunity for the guest to say, you know what? It doesn't feel as special as it did the first time. My friend is staying at this other property down the strip. You know what? Let's go and check out. I'm going to make up a property here. Let's go check out Aria. Let's go check out Venetian. And God forbid they have a good experience. Well, maybe now they get an offer from that property. I mean, it's no different from an airline. You have or a hotel, you have a bad experience, or there's a reason, there's a conference, there's a convention, there's a whatever else. There's a reason to try a different brand. God forbid you have a good experience, and all of a sudden you think back to your primary airline or your primary hotel, and you're like, well, maybe the grass is greener. Josh, your take on those friction points, and I know you sort of see it from a different perspective. I'm not sure if you have airline or hotel elite status. Interested in your view on that, because I know you've talked about it on the podcast.
I definitely have airline and some elite status and things like that. I don't, not at your level, not at the level that comes into play that, that I pay a ton of attention to it. Probably I need to learn more. I will say that. But I do see the friction, and you talked about and where I see it mostly is, I play at roughly the same level at different property groups. And this is not entirely true. And I'll talk a little bit maybe about my relationship with the Caesars group of properties, where I play a lot lower. I don't have much status with Caesars, which kind of is a nice perspective on what lower level players get and that kind of thing, because I can relate to that at that level. But at the properties where I play at a higher level, there's friction and this goes to the kind of the way the relationships are siloed. I play at the same level at roughly 3 property groups, and my offers can vary hugely, if that's the right word, from one property group to another. And where I see it come in is, I will use Wynn for as an example. Wynn is a beautiful property. I'm a great fan of Wynn. I'm a Wynn fanboy, thanks to Michael Trager, and I love the property. I would love to stay there, but my corporate offers oftentimes are not what I get from the MGM portfolio or from Venetian, for example. And so, and that's I'm in their bucket and their loyalty program as this level of player, and I'm categorized as roughly the same level of player at another property, but I'm getting so much more from that other property. Now, Wynn is a beautiful property, and there's some value just in what they offer that's not related to what they're giving me as far as a room or that kind of thing. But if I'm just looking at dollars, then I'm going to play at the portfolio at the property group where I'm getting more out of their loyalty program.
And it's an equivalent property group. It's not
Yes.
a lower, it's not, so you're
Yes. Yeah.
really, I mean, nothing's ever apples to apples, but it's completely, it's an apples to apples kind of comparison. And this is one of the, if you want to talk about friction points in casino loyalty, especially for those who are dependent on the algorithm more so than hosts, but even hosts sometimes, because it has to do with the
Hmm.
host's discretion. The tough part about casino loyalty, which is totally different than travel loyalty, is you can reach the status level, you can reach the point at which you're getting great offers, and yet those offers change. Now, they might change for a very, very reasonable reason. Your play has dropped a lot, so your last 2 trips you're gambling half the amount that you used to play. Okay, that makes sense. But a lot of times they don't drop for those reasons. They drop for either algorithmic reasons, i.e., well, do we really have to give this guy so much stuff because he keeps gambling the same amount? Or business reasons, hey, we only want to give out this many comp rooms or this many comp suites, and business is really good and occupancy is really really good, so we're going to cut their offers. And this is a really, really tough thing, because when you look at travel programs, if you want to use something like Concierge Key as an example, when someone reaches that status, you've got that status, you're proud to be that status, you really find the customer service is exceptional, and you keep that. And it's never like they never make you light or take something away during that status. But in casino loyalty, you could be the same diamond card holder, think you're doing the same kind of play, and they can take things away and adjust it. And that's very, very, it's very, very frustrating, and the optics of it are very, very bad. And using the one example like we're talking about, Wynn is like, hey, Wynn's the best property in Las Vegas. Wynn
Hmm.
knows they're the best property in Las Vegas. Their business is good on all levels. Not to quote numbers, but I think Josh could do this better than me. They're having no issues. they're having no issues with their convention business, with their food and beverage business, with their occupancy levels. You name it. It's summer, winter, doesn't matter. And that is hard. But if you think about it, in the example that we were talking about before, these properties put so much effort into cultivating players and making them loyal, right? This is loyalty, and you're getting them and you're making them loyalty, and you have them loyal, and they haven't really changed very much. And all of a sudden you're taking things away from them, or making them look at the competition. And there's got to be a way to find a middle ground with that, because losing a customer like Josh, or any decent casino customer, because business is good is a lousy reason to do that. When you've actually, think about the cost of acquisition, this cost of acquisition of a good player, of what you had to do to get this person to become loyal to you, and then to potentially lose it because you're tweaking your algorithm, or giving your hosts less discretion. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me on the practical level, because you've invested so much in getting in the customer. It also doesn't make sense to me on the long-term level, because most businesses do have upturns, downturns, things change, and they have periods where they might say, wow, we really want those Joshes back. So I mean, that's, so it's, I think there's got to be a better way, and I think that does need to be addressed on some level, and I think we have the technology that could address it, and I think there could be a good middle ground there.
Josh, back to you on that to kind of respond to that, and also just to follow up question to you in terms of your view on like I gave the example of somebody coming in because maybe they have a hotel
Mm-hmm.
status, and sort of that angle. You've talked a lot about sort of casino marketing versus host offers, but your view on sort of, well, what about somebody who's coming in as a hotel status member?
I think somebody that's coming in as a hotel status member should think about, and you kind of touched on this, or Michael did. I'll use Resorts World as the example with the Hilton affiliations. If you're coming in based on your Hilton affiliation, sign up for the Resorts World Players Program, loyalty program, and to kind of what we talked about earlier, you may start to generate offers that come from that program, distinct from your Hilton loyalty offers or whatever it is you get from Hilton. And that's a great thing, because then you might have the opportunity going forward to pick and choose. They are going to be siloed, as you said, David, but you might have the ability to say, okay, this is a Hilton offer that can get me to Vegas and I get this, or a Genting offer, a Resorts World offer that gets me to Vegas and I get this instead. So it's nice to have that. And I do it too. It's a little different, whereas I play, I don't want to say I play one property against the other, but I am comparing the offers that I get from different property groups and making a, to some extent, a value determination on where I want to stay based on what they're giving me, which is similar to, I think, the travel loyalty side. What am I going to get if I stay at a Hilton property versus a Marriott property, or something like that has that? And if you like the property, if you like Resorts World, to continue with that example, then absolutely play there as much as you can and try and build that casino status, that player loyalty status at that property, and hopefully your offers will go up. One thing I wanted to mention that kind of you guys touched on a little bit was the idea that the player loyalty programs don't do enough to kind of help you if you play less. Like your offers go down and you are disincentivized to go back. Something that I see on the Caesars side, and I don't know if it's new or if I just now see it, and I mentioned that I'm a much lower level player at Caesars, but my Caesars offers lately, I've noticed, tell me that if I go, I'll get, let's say $100 in free play in a room if I go stay at a Caesars property. But if I play and I accumulate X number of tier points during my stay, I'll get, during that stay, a certain amount of free play in addition to what they're giving me. So the more I play, the more I can get. So that I like that idea, because for a lower level player, that tells me if I go and I go crazy, or I bring a large amount of money that I want to gamble, or maybe I get lucky and I play a lot, I will be rewarded for that play on that trip. I don't have to wait for the next trip to see what happens. I know that if I double my usual play at Caesars, I can actually get this much more free play on this trip. And I like that they're doing that, because that is a way, to the point that you made about kind of the disincentivizing lower play, to kind of build that back. So I've really liked to see that. I don't know if that's new or if I'm just now seeing it, but I like it.
So, we've got a few minutes
I
left.
think that's brilliant too. I mean, it's one of the things that I've complained about in travel loyalty a lot, and I've complained about it in casino loyalty, is skin in the game. You don't have to give. I find that we have two extremes, giving away everything, status matching and giving away all this stuff, and then all of a sudden clawing back things and trying to be more restrictive. You don't have to do that. You just have to find a happy medium. And I think exactly that kind of, you should encourage people to come, give them the comp offer, but tell them that there is an expectation, and tell them what that expectation is, and tell them if they exceed that expectation, they'll get something additional. And going further about my example about dropping people's offers, that's fine. You want to drop people's offers, but drop the offer and say, but you know what? We still love you and value you, but we had to drop your
Mm-hmm.
offer. But you know what? If you do come during this trip and you do play this many tier points, or use whatever metric, tier points would probably be the best metric to use, then you know what? we're going to give you the additional that you would have regularly gotten from your offer. So sort of saying, hey, business is really good. We had to cut your offer back a little bit. But you know what? We really do love you. And we didn't really want to, it hurt us to cut back your offer. But, if you come in and you do 5,000 tier points on this trip, and they know for a fact that maybe you regularly do 3,000 tier points, we're going to give you the extra 500 in free play. Or we're going to give you that because we love you so much. Be creative about it.
And this isn't rocket science. For our travel loyalty program managers that are listening, they're thinking to themselves, this is just a standard win back offer. We have this in our program all the time. If we haven't seen you come and stay at our hotel for a while, we're going to send you an offer to come back to try to get you back to your previous level of business. In our last few minutes, I want to pose a question to both of you in terms of, and there's a little bit of a, hey, there's a hook on this as well. Next week, actually, Mike and I are sitting down in a session in Chicago with the VP of Loyalty for MGM. But Josh, I'll start with you. If you were sitting down in the room with the heads of loyalty, of various casinos, or various properties or property groups, what would be your and if you have two or three, feel free. But otherwise, what sort of your big request or piece of advice or suggestion, for, hey, here's how you could make things better for your guests.
Well, this is the Josh spoiled answer first, which is if I would the invite only programs, the MGM Noir or Venetian, I think is a chairman's level, and Wynn, I think, also has a chairman's level. I would like to have, as a player that maybe plays close to the threshold of those, I would like somebody to give me a wink nod of how close am I? Because truly, if I knew that I'll use MGM Noir was attainable for me in a calendar year or in a player's loyalty program year, whatever that is, I would be incentivized to try and reach that. But not knowing, because it's invite only, I am less likely to push to try and get that because I don't know exactly what that is. Now that's an answer that I know is not relevant to probably 99% of the people out there, but that's the first thing that popped into my head as a question that I would ask someone, at that level. Truly, I think highlighting the benefits that come from those programs is key. What am I getting from the MGM loyalty program at the various levels that is different from what I would get if I just booked otherwise, or what's different that I don't get as a hosted player? What comes from each of those levels, really highlighting those things. People like to see that. As a player that plays, again, at kind of a higher level, it's not as important to me because I tend to get most of those things through my relationship with my host. So I don't honestly get a lot of benefit from being platinum at MGM or being diamond, I think it is, at Venetian, because I get much more than that from my host directly. So kind of what I'd like to see is maybe even for higher level players, what's the benefit of these programs to me? Is there one still?
Interesting, Michael. Any thoughts on and you'll have the opportunity with MGM next week. But if you're sitting in the room with the heads of loyalty at these casino programs or properties, what would your advice be?
I think it's I love Josh's point about top tier status when you don't know. You basically, you have to qualify, but you don't exactly know what the metric to qualify is. And I think a really important thing is to do a differentiation between casino loyalty and travel loyalty with regard to that top tier program. So when you're looking at like Delta 360 or Concierge Key or Global Services, which are all invite only programs with, we know what some of the metrics are, but they're not there. I think it's a little bit different with travel. Yes, there's a part, if you want to be Concierge Key, you need to be loyal to an American Airlines and especially fly on American Airlines metal, mostly American Airlines flights, not just the partner flights. But a lot of that, it has to do with travel and business travel, and it's going to be what it's going to be. You don't have a lot of control on it, and you're talking about big, people who spend big money on travel. They're sort of like choosing the brand to be loyal to. I do think with gaming, and casino loyalty, it's a little bit different than that, because Josh has I'm going to say a lot more discretion, probably than a traveler. He also he's not dealing with a situation like where certain airlines, you're a road warrior and you live in a city like Charlotte, so you're going to punish yourself if you're not with American Airlines. So obviously Concierge Key would be the program to go for. So I think it's hard. I mean, I love the idea that you need to approve people for the status level, but I think Josh's point is really, really good. And that it is a little bit hard not knowing where the bar is, and possibly the bar is changing every single year, and that's tough. On the other end of it, that does make it extremely exclusive. And I think that's wonderful. It makes it extremely exclusive. But for me as a player, and I have a couple of friends as an example for that, I don't think I would, to me, casino loyalty is supposed to be enjoyment and recreational, and that's an extreme amount of stress. If you become married to a program, which is the goal, and you really love the property, love the program, and love all of this, and you're going to literally have to worry every year if you're going to requalify in that program, that to me is really quite stressful. So I think that level of potential stress is outweighed by the incredible status you get from the fact that it's so exclusive. So I think that programs need to figure out a better way to deal with that, and that might be a combination of you can become our top tier status with this many tier points, which is an incredible number of tier points, or we can nominate you for it and you can do it. So you have basically, you still have those two paths. Now, one thing that needs to be important to differentiate between casino loyalty and travel loyalty a lot of times is this approval process. And the approval process for things, even like 7 stars for Caesar's Rewards, they tell you the number of tier points you need, but they still need to approve if you're 7 stars. So even if you hit the tier points, you don't necessarily get it. Casino programs, even though you would think it's a gambling program and they enjoy gambling, they don't enjoy gambling. They actually like to win, and casinos like to win. That's their business model. And I think part of the hard part there is there is this factor in casino loyalty in general, is customers who could be considered not profitable customers, because of the types of games they play, and because of the amount of comps they get. And that is a tricky factor, which I don't think you really run into in travel loyalty so much, especially now, because now the travel loyalty is so tied quite often to spend. You don't run into this situation. It would be equivalent to the situation with airlines where someone was just flying, $200 or $300 airfare, which got them 30,000 miles for the flight. And, all status was just based on that. So the person spending a lot of money, it used to be you could spend a lot of money on an airline ticket or less money on the airline ticket. It was based on the class of service and the distance of the flight, right? So you could have people you're giving your top tier status to who are less valuable customers. That's most of that problem has been solved in travel loyalty, but it still exists more so in casino loyalty, and that's a tricky one, and it's probably another fascinating conversation.
Interesting. For my 2 cents worth, mine is resort fees. It's interesting. Before we got on this call, I went through my emails and looked up some emails from Resorts World and Caesars and MGM, and I don't think I'm in the database for Venetian or Wynn, so I don't see those. But I don't hold status, or whatever else. So and honestly, actually, Michael, a quick plug for your conference, Zorkfest, coming up later in the year. But when we
Mm-hmm.
were there last year was when I signed up for the Caesars program, and they don't really have any play data on me, or it was one visit, not really much gambling or anything like that. It was really just they have me in the database. So I guess I'm probably still getting welcome offers, which might be more generous than what they would be otherwise for my very little business that I gave them. But one of the things I always read the footnotes in these things as a loyalty practitioner, and it's interesting because they all have some variation of a couple of things. Number one, hey, here's a casino offer. Here's 3 complimentary nights at the property, and maybe there's some resort or some free play gaming credit. Maybe there's not. Maybe it's just here's a couple of free hotel nights. But resort fee applies. Or this actually annoys me about Resorts World's emails is resort fee may apply. It's like, tell me your resort fees. You send me an offer. Does a resort fee apply or it doesn't apply? Or don't say, hey, here's a really generous offer, but we expect you to spend a lot of money at the gaming, on the gaming floor this trip. That's a different aspect. I'm just literally just talking about you're sending me an offer to come and stay at the property. Of course, it's implied you want me to come and spend money on the gaming floor or whatever. That's fine. But MGM, here's 4 free nights, but you're going to be paying $50 resort fee every night. It's like, you know what? That's not free. And one of the things we know in travel loyalty, in fact, in the loyalty in whatever industry, is that the point of redemption is the most important part of the relationship with a member. And we know that if a member has a positive redemption experience, they then go on to demonstrate accelerated earning behavior post redemption. Now, we know this is fact. It's been proven in academic studies. It's been proven in program data. This is a true. I mean, there's some nuances about you have to structure it correctly, and the reward must be meaningful, and all that kind of stuff. But casinos seem to not get this because they seem to be punishing you at the point of redemption. Here's an offer, but we're going to give you a free night, but it's a $50 resort fee or whatever. It's like, I don't know, I can go online, on maybe not any given day, and I can look at certain MGM properties, and it costs less than $50 to stay, not including the resort fee. So how does that make me feel about you're supposedly giving me a free night? So I think that there is total, and again, it goes to these silos and all the rest of it, but I think the casino properties need to figure this out, that if you're sending an offer to somebody for a free night, it needs to be a free night. Now, maybe that means if you're giving them a resort credit of, $100 resort credit or something else, maybe only give them $25 or $50 to essentially cover the fact that in the back end you've accounted for the fact that you're not making them pay the resort fee. You can make the math work in the back end. But anyway, just to me, those are some low
this is such
fruit.
a point. I actually said this for years and years and years, and then I stopped saying it because I said it so many times. And I will say this to there's very little that I could tell you that I really feel so strongly about with regard to casino loyalty. You should never be giving a casino loyalty customer, a complimentary room, a $0 complimentary room, and charging resort fee. Never, ever, ever. Okay? Because you don't give someone something for free and charge a resort fee. That's setting aside all of the other arguments we can have, on casino loyalty when we're talking about people who work with offers and tier levels. One of the best tier level benefits in casino programs, including Caesars Rewards and MGM Rewards, is the fact that certain tier levels get you no resort fee. I think it's a great tier level benefit. I think that's a very important. I think it's super smart for the smaller players, and it gives people to say, well, why do I want that status? Why I'm going to get that status? Because I'm going to play a little bit more, because then I'll get no resort fees, even if I've got to pay for my room and I don't get the complimentary rooms. But I am telling you, and there is no excuse anywhere ever to give somebody a complimentary room and charge them a resort fee, because that complimentary room is designed to get you to come into the casino and play more and lose money. If we want to be honest about it, casinos have a house edge. They are getting you to come into the property. They want you to come in the property, and no matter how much everyone smiles or what it is, at the end of the day, they know you're going to lose money, because that's the way gambling is structured. So why would you give someone something for free and then punish them? And to take it even further, The issue where they don't tell you if they're going to charge a resort fee or not, that's totally whack-doodle. I mean, that doesn't even like that's like a middle ground of like confusion.
Well, here's the thing. If the other thing is this, you're charging the $50 resort fee. Guess what? That's $50 or $35 or $45, whatever it is, that I'm not spending on the casino floor or at the bar or at the restaurant or at the concert tickets or for room service or whatever else. They're going to get the $50 back.
And David, you talked about the value of the redemption experience. That is a big part of it. If you go in expecting a comp room, if you didn't read the fine print, to your point, to Michael's point, if you go in expecting a free room because you got an offer that said these nights are comped and you didn't see the resort fee may apply, that ruins the redemption experience and makes it much less likely if you at the end of your trip, you thought you were going in free, even if you found out when you checked in that you had resort fees. But if you see your folio at the end of the trip and it has $200 in resort fees, that you, even though you kind of knew it, but if you thought, I thought I was going on a comp stay, and you see that at the end, that really does tarnish that experience that you got from redeeming that offer. And to Michael's point, there is real value in casino tier statuses where those resort fees are waived. And I don't know off the top of my head which level or which properties, but if you have that, then that takes away that worry about the offer that you get. Do resort fees apply to this or not? I mean, using Caesars as an example, for me, I mentioned that I have fairly low status at Caesars. Whatever status I had last year did qualify me for no resort fees. So I got an offer. I stayed at Caesars. I would have had to pay resort fees. Fortunately, I was at the level that I didn't have to. So that made a big difference for me.
Yeah, Caesars is diamond and MGM is gold. And I understand somebody in the back office is looking at this and saying, well, we're doing this because we want to encourage them to get to the status level so they don't have resort fees. But it's totally missing the point. It is a comp room. It is, the way I look at it is that don't give them the comp room. Give them a $30.
Yes.
If you want to, give them a $30 room and charge them a resort fee. But if you're going to give them a $0 room, give them a $0 room. If you don't really want to give it, and if the problem is you're worried about overall resort fee revenue in the entire property or whatever, then raise your resort fee $2 to cover all the comp rooms. But I think the optics of it also today with social media, what a great brag thing is. And now MGM does a great job with this at their website. They show you the list price of the room and they put X's over all of it. That, and they tell you this was, this Hard Rock does that too, which I love. This stay would have cost you $1,400. This is what you want people, and you want people to see, brag, zero resort fee. Look, they gave you a comp room and even no resort fee. Look, these people are amazing. It's such a good marketing opportunity. And instead of, what happens is it's that bait and switch, and that's that little bit of squeezing that little bit extra money. Do it somewhere, squeeze the money somewhere else. Don't do it, because this is such a great opportunity for social media, for basically making people be proud, because it's like, especially the new players, I finally reached a milestone. They finally sent me a comp room. I finally got a comp room. Oh my God, I'm great. Oh.
Well, I think it's a really good point, because somebody in the back office is saying, well, yeah, we just get to gold status if you're MGM, for example, and you won't have to pay resort fee, but that's fine. But the world doesn't work where you just start sending comp offers once somebody gets to gold. Exactly. You typically start sending comp offers. Somebody could go to Vegas for the first time in their life. They sign up for the Players Club, they stick the card in the machine, or they present it at the table. They might not even gamble that much. We might be talking they gamble $100 or $200. It's, relatively low levels. I'm not saying $100 is not a lot of money. And then they get an offer. They will get it. Often you can gamble just that, or even just spend some money in the restaurants, and you'll get an offer to come back for a free stay. But because they want you to come back. If you've been a customer once, you could be a customer again. And they're very good with that. The casinos are not silly or dumb when it comes to that side of the marketing. But as you say, as you say, Michael, it's fine. If they don't have the status, charge them resort fees when they're paying cash for a room. Because guess what? If they're paying cash for a room, they might be there for a conference. Work might be paying, So by all means do that. But if they're staying on a comp stay, which in the travel sector we would refer to as a redemption stay, that's when you want to make it as frictionless as possible. Give them something to put on their social media to show, oh my goodness, look what I got, because, they're going to have such a good time. And this whole conversation is about, even when we think about hosts,
But
you have a
look at
bad trip, the host tries to make you feel better so that you still want to come back again, right? That's what this is about.
Well, look at the disconnect here. And this is not picking on any one program or not, but to the best of my knowledge, and I'm sure it's this way with Hyatt, if you do a redemption in your Hyatt Globalist at Rio, if you redeem your World of Hyatt points, you pay no resort fee.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get a casino offer from Rio, you might be paying a resort fee. So basically Hyatt's saying, it's okay, your free room from World of Hyatt, we're going to not give the resort fee. Now I understand it's not apples to apples because it's status, but actually I think Hilton, it is apples to apples.
Actually, no,
because Hilton redemptions have no
Yep.
resort fee. So basically, if you redeem a room at the Conrad, you pay no resort fee, but you could get a Conrad comp room offer for a gambler and have to pay a resort fee. This inconsistency makes no, so why it just doesn't make sense to me.
Michael, there's a better example. Go back to your Hyatt in Rio, and I might be wrong on this, but I believe this to be the case, right? If you book just a cash stay, just 2 cash stays, if you book through the Hyatt website as a Hyatt Globalist, you will get your resort fee waived.
You're right, absolutely.
But I believe if you book on the Rio website and you stay and you front up and you show your Hyatt Globalist card, I might be wrong on this, and this may have changed now with the rebranding, but you would get charged a resort fee. And that may have changed now because I think technically they are now officially a Hyatt sub-brand. So that may now have changed. But in the beginning, that was an issue. Hilton, you waive the resort fee on a redemption stay, but you pay it on a cash stay. But as you say, you get a free stay through the casino. Now you're paying a resort fee. It's a mess. This is the point. We can't even get this straight between the three of us. Imagine what your average customer, your median customer, is struggling with to get their head around.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's and I think the thing we always come back to, especially with social media and people becoming, your best advocates for a brand, your best advocates for a program, being able to show this free stuff is so great. In travel, being able to show the free redemption, in, be able to say, hey, look how free this is. It's really free. Look, it's zero.
Especially in the age of TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, it's just so good because it really gets it. People really love that. And I think maybe at the beginning and a couple years ago when people weren't as fluid with these kind of programs, but now, a lot of things, people are critical of travel loyalty in general because of the gotchas, right? The availability gotchas, the resort fee gotcha, if there's something, if there's a gotcha, the extra taxes or something like that. And I think you need to develop a program where when people are doing their redemptions, or we're considering casino rooms redemptions, that they feel good about it, and free is as close to free as possible. It's just the right way to do it. Figure out another way to do it. I say the same thing in travel loyalty. I would rather, then charge them more points than instead of charging them taxes. Little lower, figure out a way the taxes and fees can be lower and get more points for them. So then at least they can brag, I got this for free. Not, I got this for free plus $700 in taxes. That's not free. I mean, to me, it's not free. I mean, that's, I just think there's an optics play here. And now that people are getting wiser to loyalty programs and wiser to using them properly and wiser to loyalty, I think you don't want people saying, well, that's not really free. That totally destroy, having customers, when someone brags about something, saying, yeah, but that's not free. Look at that. That's not such a great deal. That's the last thing you want your consumers or your members to be doing.
Such a good point. And Michael, I know you and I are going to have a chance to continue that side of the conversation next week in Chicago at Loyalty Summit Americas. Josh, thanks so much for joining. Before we go, give yourself another plug for your podcast, because you've been very generous with your time here today. But for those that want to maybe learn a little bit more about, Vegas or casino loyalty, or just want to hear Josh get picked on by his co-host, Josh, tell us a bit more. Where can they find
Well,
you?
thanks, David. Thanks for having me on. You guys go way over my head on some of the travel loyalty side of things, which is good. This is a learning experience for me too. If you do want to hear us more on Crap Vegas, it's a great. It's my co-host Chris and I talk about, as I mentioned, all things related to Vegas, our experiences. It's not, you don't have to be a high roller to listen to us. You don't even have to want to aspire to be that, because I know a lot of the people that probably are your audience, David, can't imagine or even have any desire to gamble the way that I gamble or play, that kind of thing. But we do all sorts of fun things in Las Vegas, and enjoy talking about that. The new shows that come out, concerts, restaurants, and it's meant to be. I mean, I kind of pride myself on just being this show. I forgive the music, but easy listening Las Vegas talk. It's just meant to be fun, and we have a lot of fun talking about the various things that are going on in Vegas. I try not to take it too seriously, because if you're taking this gambling experience too seriously, then that's there's downsides to that. This is meant to be fun. Vegas is meant to be a fun city within reason, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes we go a little overboard. But if you also want to learn more about what, being a more serious, quote unquote, serious gambler, then we talk about that too. I mean, having lines of credit at casinos, what are the pluses and minuses to that? Having hosts, how to get transportation, all those kind of things. But it's meant to just be a lot of fun.
And the only thing we'd probably say is the one piece of advice probably not to listen to Josh on is anything to do with frozen custard. I think that comes up as a regular feature in your episode.
Love it, frozen custard. I was just there in August.
Josh, thanks so much for joining. Michael, we'll definitely see you next week at Lordy Summit Americas. This has been a fascinating conversation. I have no doubt we'll get to chat about it again. I think casino loyalty is such a it's always sat off to the side of travel loyalty, and travel loyalty practitioners are always kind of like, that's sort of something different over there. But I think both can very much learn from each other. There's some things that casino loyalty programs do incredibly well that travel loyalty programs can learn from, and vice versa. So thank you both for a fascinating discussion, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.